talking about grass and grass seeds, types of grass for cool season lawns. Living in Western Washington, cool season grass is the best grass seed to grow in this area. So I'm going to talk about basically the three types that I use, and we'll talk about another type I don't have a sample of here. What we have is bent grass, Kentucky bluegrass, and fescue. Now, there's a couple different types of fescues. We'll talk about that in just a second. First of all, I want to start with the Kentucky bluegrass. The Kentucky bluegrass is my favorite. It's a really deep green, but it's probably one of the more difficult cool season grasses to grow, especially if you want something fast growing. Kentucky bluegrass is a more lateral growing. It fills in and recovers well when you have bad patches, bad spots, those sorts of things. It grows more laterally. It has a little bit bigger leaf blade, and it takes about 18 to 21 days for this to germinate. And you got to wait till your soil temperatures are at least 55 degrees to get these to germinate. I had a really good sample of when I planted my front yard of the bent grass that I was growing and the Kentucky bluegrass. I had planted them both on the same day, and they germinated way apart from each other. The bent grass germinated very fast, and the Kentucky bluegrass, man, it took a long time, and it was really slow to fill in. So it looks really great, though. It's a great growing grass. It's deep green. It's got the wider blades, and it's my favorite. I really like it. I have the fescue right here, and the red creeping fescue that I use is a very shade tolerant. In fact, that's why I have it, is for my shaded areas. And you can see the deep green here in my red creeping fescue. It compares to the Kentucky bluegrass pretty well, but there's a big differences about the Kentucky bluegrass and the red chewing fescue. It's a really fine blade, and it grows a little taller, and faster, but it handles the shade very well. Now, fescue is not so much of a heat tolerant type of grass, and this is not going to be like a playground type of grass because it's not going to handle being trampled on by kids very well. It's just a good growing grass for shaded areas. So, you got to keep that in mind. If you need something for a playground type area, turf type tall fescue, that's a better grass for that. It's going to handle shade as well, but it's going to have a fatter blade. The chewing, the creeping, and fine fescues are a thinner blade of grass, and the tall fescues are a little bit, thicker. It gets just as green. These samples I have here, they're in 4-inch pots. I haven't done anything to them. I planted them last November. I haven't fertilized them. I haven't done anything to them. They've just been growing in the pots, and they turned out really, really well. So, I think if you're looking for a nice dark green grass, for shaded areas, this is a good grass seed to go with. I'm using the Arrow Seeds Confident Shade. I like Arrow Seeds. I like their grass seed quality. I found them through the Kentucky bluegrass that I grow, and they don't overcharge. Their seed prices are very reasonable, and they are blue tag certified seeds. It's just when they blend them, they don't have them recertified. Everything that they receive in is blue tag, but when they blend their seeds, they don't have them recertified, because then they would have to charge more money for the seed and all that. So they basically go off of the info of the seed that they get in bulk before blending. And the Kentucky bluegrass that I have, Fairway Blues, it's a blend that is 98.7% pure. It's no weeds, no noxious weeds, and no crop seed. It's a really good blend. Now, the red creeping fescue that I have, it is the same thing, but the Confident Shade does have some Kentucky bluegrass mixed in it, and it also has some ryegrass in that. Now, my bent grass, you'll see here, it's the top one, and it's a much lighter green. Bent grass is more of a color of like POA. I mean, even when I add iron to my putting green and the bent grass, it gets a darker green, but it doesn't get a deep dark green. You could still see a big contrast between the putting green area and the fairway grass that I have, Kentucky bluegrass. Now, the bent grass, it's creeping, so it's a lateral spreading grass, but it germinates very quick. This is going to germinate in 7 to 10 days, and you're going to be doing your first mow probably in 18. That's how fast it grows. I really like this grass. Bent grass is probably one of my favorite grasses to grow, especially as a low mow. If you have a rotary mower that goes, 3/4 of an inch, like my Honda goes to 3/4 of an inch, you could probably maintain a Kentucky bent grass at that height, and it would look really, really good. It covers really good. It recovers very fast. When I was trimming one of my trees, I had cut all these big branches off of it, and I had put it all on a tarp, and I dragged it across my lawn because it was in the back part of my lawn. And when I dragged it, one of the branches, I didn't know, but there was a lot of tree stuff on the tarp, and I dragged it to the street to load it in my van so I could take it to the recycling, yard waste recycling. And I didn't realize there was a branch, a big thick branch, sticking down. So when I dragged it, I had created a big gouge in my grass all through my putting green. And I knew it was going to recover. It kind of looked terrible for a couple of weeks, and it was wintertime. This was like January or something like that. And I dragged this thing, and I saw that big gouge in my putting green, and I was just like, oh my God, that's going to look terrible. It was amazing. By the next week, it had actually filled in and recovered. And this is in January. I was very surprised at how quick that creeping bent grass had recovered itself. So whenever I have any issue in my putting green, the one thing I do know is the grass is going to recover pretty quickly. So that's the one thing I do like about the bent grass. So the bent grass also is a pretty fat blade. I have some samples here of the blades close up, and they're pretty fat. They're pretty thick. So you got to keep that in mind as well. I basically use this only for putting green. It's a really good reel mowing grass, though. If you're a reel mower and you want a really nice tight lawn, creeping bent grass is really nice. But if you're going to cut it low, you need to make sure you have a level lawn, or else you're going to have some problems with some scalping and some things like that. I do have the hole cut piece right here as well, and that's just basically showing you kind of how it recovers. I had pulled that out of the putting green when I put the hole in, and the hole cutter really, when you're pushing the plug out, it really crushes and smashes that grass down, and this was really terrible looking when I had pulled the plug out. This is probably a week after, 2 weeks after, I believe I pulled that plug out. And, it's recovered really well. Um, I had a piece also that I had scalped, and it had recovered very quickly. I replaced it with one of my hole plugs, and that piece, it regrew very quick, very green, and I was able to put it back in my putting green area to patch another spot. So, I keep all these plugs and I just keep them growing just like they are here in these, pots. And these are what I'm using for doing patching and replacing spots in my grass. So, the ryegrass, I'll talk about that a little bit. I'm not really a fan of ryegrass, but if you want an easy grass to grow or an easier type of grass to grow, ryegrass is a really good grass to grow. Uh, it's shiny on one side and dull on the other side of the blade. It's really good for striping. I think this is why a lot of people like to grow it. It greens up really, really well. It's going to germinate quickly as well too. It germinates in basically 7 to 10 days, and you're going to be mowing your lawn within 21 days probably. Uh, if you want something easy to maintain, something that's going to look really good, get a deep dark green, and stripe really good, you can reel mow it. You can cut it short. You can, rotary mow it. It's going to look great. You know, all all these grasses, but the creeping bent grass, you can maintain it at a high cut. I prefer all my grass low, um, but if you like to cut your grass at 2 inches, 3 inches, whatever, you could use these grass types. They're going to get deep dark green, and they're going to work out really well for you. And the taller that these grass types are, the more they're going to prevent weeds and disease, those sorts of things. And as long as you take care of it and you water it and you give it a little bit of fertilizer, I'm nitrogen and iron. That's all I use. You don't need to add all this other stuff. Ryegrass, same thing. You don't need to add a whole bunch of different fertilizers to it. I like grass cut short. So when I'm growing grass and doing research on grass types, that's what I'm looking for, is a nice type of grass to do a low mow on. So I hope that helps you out on a little bit of information for the different types of cool season grass. I don't know how guys that deal with warm season grasses deal with that. I could not deal with my grass being brown and dormant all winter long. I know some people overseed it with cool season grasses and then they come back and they kill it the next year. That just seems like a whole bunch of work. I don't know. If I lived in a warm season area, man, I don't even think I could still grow a warm season grass. I like the way they look, but man, when they go dormant, I couldn't deal with having a brown lawn for 3 months, 4 months, whatever it is for winter. So that's how I see things with grass. I hope that kind of helps you with some different types. My biggest thing here was I have the samples here of showing you the different types of grass, and you can see how they look, understanding how they grow and everything. Grass is one of the easiest things to grow. Realistically, you can grow any of these grasses pretty easily. You have to have a little more patience with the Kentucky bluegrass, but the Kentucky bluegrass, that's my favorite by far. And my personal preference is to not buy blends that are different types of grass, like a rye, Kentucky bluegrass, and tall fescue mixed together. I like to stick with just Kentucky bluegrass, just bent grass, or just a fescue. The only reason my shade mix I'm using has 3 different grasses and I'm using it is because it's supposed to be specifically for deep shaded areas. it's supposed to be the best growing for those areas. That's the only reason why that Confident Shade mix that I'm using is really just for the shade tolerance. You know, I do mix the Kentucky bluegrass in it and try to get it to grow through. But, you know, you got to do what you got to do. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and got some good information out of it. And we will see you on the next one.